We are here for the college football forecast, and storm clouds are on the horizon. And obviously, we had a frost report already, but we're going to talk about some of the other things that have happened in this college football forecast. As always, we start by looking back, then we deal with the present, then we deal with the future. So I'm going to start with my ever present co-host, the incredibly sweet faced and somewhat poisonous tongue sometimes, Mr. Brock Vieira. Uh, Looking back at last week, what things really stuck with you about the college football world?
I'm gonna kick it off with a game that really wasn't covered that much last week, and that's Washington and Michigan State. I was very shocked that Michigan State was the underdog in that game, and while I was shocked at what I saw on the field, Washington absolutely trounced them. Big setback for Mel Tucker in his was it third year now up in East Lansing. So interesting to see how they kind of rebound from that. Besides that, it really was a great test to see where does everyone kind of stack. We didn't really see too many tough competitions, close games for which we were anticipating last year. So it was good to see that Georgia is still that dominant force. Alabama, we already know. USC is they're in the mix. We can't really discount them. Those things are still going on, but at the same time, there's a bunch of games last week for which weren't supposed to be close. And was like, wait a second. This is not where it's supposed to be. So I can't wait to get into that a little bit more and kind of dissect these games.
Yeah, I think one of the things that stuck out in my head is the each coast, right? I think that people are sleeping a little bit on each coast. I think the ACC is being slept on a little bit, and I think the Pac-12 is being slept on more than a little bit. Mm-hmm. I think that there are some really good teams in the Pac-12 this year, and it may not be the teams that people have come to expect. Now, USC, of course, is sort of a usual suspects kind of thing. But I think there's going to be at least one or two other teams in the Pac-12 that show themselves to be good that we aren't even really focusing on yet. And it's not going to be just Utah automatically or, teams we're sort of used to. I think at least one team that we're not used to ends up being pretty good this year. Mm-hmm. And then Clemson, sort of you automatically talk about. But, I mean, look at what Syracuse is doing. I mean, I think there's some teams in the ACC who are better than we think as well. And then the Midwest is going to be exactly what we think. Ohio State up here, Michigan just trailing a little bit behind, and then everybody else way behind those two. I will be pleasantly surprised if that's not the case. I always root for that not to be the case, but usually I end up disappointed. And then the SEC, tell me if you've heard this before, Alabama, Georgia. I would love to see once again some team establish that they are, a real contender and might throw a scare into those other two teams. And then the last thing I will say, and I'm higher on this team than almost everyone else, but I think we had a sort of parting of the ways on Penn State. I really believe in Penn State more than most people. I know that you may not be fully on board yet with Penn State. I think that this is a probably one or two loss team, probably two loss. I think it's probably about a two-loss team this year. I think they're going to throw a scare into somebody, and they might even beat somebody they're not supposed to beat. Just a feeling.
Bill, for as much as negative as I typically am, especially when it comes to the Nittany Lions, I have to share the same sentiment. I mean, when they played Purdue, I really thought Purdue was going to win, and Penn State played exactly how I thought they were going to play. But in recent weeks, they've really come on, and maybe not this season, but after Sean Clifford leaves, they got an absolute stud as a backup. I forget his name right now. Their running back is a freshman already. They got a lot of young cats that can really make a difference in the future, and I think they're going to contribute this year as well. And that's why I'm agreeing with that sentiment that they're gonna beat a team that we don't expect, and then they're gonna ride that for the next 6 years, and then continuously, not meet expectations. But that's further down the road. This is the year they get to enjoy. Okay. Yeah, because what they did in Auburn wasn't impressive because they went down to Auburn and did it against an Auburn team that's clearly not up to par.
Sure.
But it's about handling adversity, and that's something that they showed down there at Jordan Hare, and it's something they've shown throughout the season, and that's a big foundational block to building a great program.
Yeah, I'm a James Franklin guy, and it's not always easy to be a James Franklin guy because James Franklin doesn't always make it easy.
He never makes it easy. He threw away the Rose Bowl. He got smoked by Arkansas. Got smoked by Iowa. All the time. Who did he lead? Oh, Kentucky. Yeah, Benny Snell ran all over them. Yeah, it is not easy to be a
right.
Lion guy.
No, but but you're reminded when you see what's happening at Nebraska and some other places, you could do a lot worse than James Franklin, I guess is what I'm trying to remind people.
That is true. Nebraska also put themselves in that position by being, thinking they're bigger than they are. But we'll get to that later. Guys,
We are so going to get
thoughts
into that.
About the Cornhuskers.
Yeah, obviously the Cornhuskers and the Sun Devils are going to get your special brand of attention on this show. So I'm sure their fan bases can't wait to see how that goes. I'm thinking about starting
any worse than the coaching hires.
I'm thinking about introducing a new segment on our show called Scorched Earth, where I just let you off your chain and just see what happens. I'm tossing the ideas around in my head, but yeah, here's what I will say about the Big Ten. The Big Ten is the other conference, right? I mean, the SEC is the SEC. The Big Ten, we always assume that at least one Big Ten team is going to be in the mix, and then Oklahoma, usually we toss them in there. And then the wild card is the other team, right? And then they'll expand out. They'll be more interesting. But the other team could be Pac-12, though usually isn't. Could be non-Power 5, right? We've seen that's now a possibility. Thank you, Cincinnati, for kicking that door open. And then I think this year it's going to be back to being Clemson again, which it was for a while. The one thing I'll say could throw a monkey wrench in it is could somehow the Big Ten get two teams in? Could they end up with a team that, as happened to the SEC, sometimes blows through everything in the regular season and looks like an unstoppable killing machine, then loses a game at the worst possible moment, gets knocked out of playing in the conference title, and then some team that's also very good but doesn't seem as dominant ends up winning the title for the conference, and now you have a discussion about two teams making it in. Probably doesn't happen, obviously. Usually the only conference where you can get away with that usually is the SEC because SEC, which wipes away all questions and answers, and suddenly everyone feels good about you because you play in the SEC and you won double-digit games, so automatically you must be a good football team. But yeah, so plowing forward and talking about what that means for this week, we're going to talk a little bit about, I think, what's going to be a very meaningful week for the guys who didn't get fired. And then obviously I'll give you a moment to, like I said, go scorched earth or whatever term we end up using for that segment on those two unfortunate fan bases and those unfortunate schools that are now back in the market. And we'll talk about possible guys that those teams should be considering when they look for a new coach. So tell me, what games and players are you excited about as you look forward to this coming week?
So definitely Texas is a big game that I've always been a fan of watching the Longhorns. Not necessarily a fan of the Longhorns in general, but they always produce some type of interesting football, whether that be they're really good or really awful. And obviously this year they're really good. They had a little bit of a scare last week because UTSA was able to break away after. Jordan McGuire is building an absolute monster down there in Lubbock right now. Not only does he have a great pedigree, he's getting back into that Texas high school scene for which he built his career, bringing in some really young recruits that he can help mold over these next 4 years of their lives. And at the same time, at Texas, you still have all those big weapons, right? Big, bad Bijan Robinson, Worthy, Whittington, Quinn Ewers is expected to be back. Cat, is this the day where Texas firmly establishes himself as a team that's going to be a consistent winner, or are they going to go back to their old ways of flying too close to the sun, playing too good, and then playing not good at all? So that's what I'm really looking forward to this game. Big test. I believe they're at Lubbock. And let's not forget, even though they blew them out last year, 2 years ago, I think Texas Tech was up 11 with like 2 minutes left. And they were supposed to win, but obviously they melted. So this Texas Tech team is a team that has historically played them close, even past the Crabtree incident, or Crabtree moment back in 2008, 2009. Another game I'm really looking at, it's under the radar, Michigan State and Minnesota. Right now, Minnesota's favorite in that game. They have one of the best running backs in the nation, Muhammad Ibrahim. Michigan State just got smoked up in where is UW Spokane, right? Or Seattle?
No, UW. Well, Spokane is where Eastern Washington is, and University of Washington is in Seattle, or right outside.
Yeah, right. So they went up there and got trampled. Like it wasn't even close, which is great for Kalen DeBoer. Like that's a program setting win. But for Mel Tucker, you got to think to yourself, hey, what's going on here? Last year's team wouldn't have lost like that, right? Is it because you don't have Kenneth Walker? Is it because Peyton Thorne's not the dude? Whatever it is, to me, this is going to be a good test to see how Mel Tucker and Sparty matches up against the rest of the Big Ten this season. And if there will be, two teams for the Big Ten that could potentially make the playoffs. The last game for me that I'm really excited about is, of course, third Saturday in September. Tennessee, Florida. Tennessee's coming in at a big 10.5-point favorite. The biggest line in favor for the Vols in has to be over a decade, maybe even until Fulmer was still there. The line hasn't been in favor of them. Obviously, Heupel has turned that program around in a very short amount of time. He's got a stud at quarterback in Hendon Hooker who's really coming to his own. Cedric Tillman is going to be a great NFL player, no doubt in my mind. A rushing attack that can really beat you up. And we don't talk about it enough because we talk about the no huddle and the passing. No, when they get going on the ground, they move people, right? And then we have a Florida team that hasn't lived up to expectations after the Utah game, right? I'm a big fan of Billy Napier. I still am. I think he's the right man for the job. But you lose to Kentucky, you don't really have, any momentum you gain for going from unranked to 12th. Now I think they're unranked again. That it's just not good. And I think that this is going to be a game to see where these programs are at and who is the team that's going to be matching up against Georgia in the SEC East, if there is one.
Yep. And Tennessee, you mentioned obviously Tillman. They have another receiver who is an absolute beast. And they have Heath Schuler's son, Navy Schuler, all-name team candidate. They have Princeton Fant at tight end, right? They've got some great names.
Brew McCoy just transferred in, and he was always the top prospect.
Danico Slaughter. I mean, they're really a contender for the all-name team as a team. But their receiving group as a whole, I mean, there's not too many better. I'll put it that way. I don't think there's a lot of better receiving groups than Tennessee. And obviously the headliner is Tillman, but I've seen their other receivers and I like them all.
There ain't no scrubs. I can tell you that. No, they're doing everything right. And to me personally, if you really want to spend the extra money, it depends how much money the Tennessee boosters want to spend. If you can bring in a guy like Brian Hartline as offensive coordinator, of course Heupel would still call the plays, but give Hartline a more improved role with a more guaranteed salary than whatever Ohio State is paying him, and you can get in the recruits that he's bringing in, that just shoots you right back up to national championship contender. That's how close they are. That's a credit to what Heupel has done, because I remember when Butch Jones got hired, and we were riding high for a minute, and that minute ended quickly. And then obviously, Pruitt comes in, and oh no, Derek Dooley was there. Everyone thought, you're gonna be you're Vince's son. You're gonna bring us a national championship like your dad did Georgia. No, right? Like, what Heupel has done there for the talent that he has in his short years, people forget when he came in, everyone left. Like I don't think people remember how bad it was when Heupel came in 3 short years, with this not even being his 3rd completed year. He has them competing for an SEC East title. Great credit for him, and they're gonna be something to watch in the future.
Yeah, no, I'm excited about the future for Tennessee as well. And like I said, this could be a statement, as they say, statement game. There's a cliche I absolutely loathe, but here I am using it. But nonetheless, it is a game that will establish if they are perhaps for real. I'll put it that way. Or if instead they're just, out here having fun playing football. But, with some years, this happened where it's like, hey, it's a nice day. Uniforms look cool. They're cool looking uniforms.
Beautiful uniforms.
Look, a checkerboard in the end zone. I mean, there's sometimes there's just a bunch of healthy young men enjoying themselves in the sun.
Stuffing 110 people in a stadium that should only fit 80. Sorry, did I say something?
but here's the once again save that for the Scorched Earth segment. But but like I said, I want to see somebody emerge as that other team, and Tennessee has that opportunity this year. And then the Pac-12, I mean, it's sort of wide open, though. Obviously, we assume USC is going to end up being the class. Oregon is usually a team we assume will be good, but we assume it just because we assume it, right? There's not always something always there to definitely back it up. They always recruit well, and sometimes that shows up on the field, and sometimes it's just like, oh, what a bunch of 4 and 5 stars they have here who, sometimes it just means you have a bunch of guys that were highly recruited.
Well, Justin Herbert, let's run the ball.
Yeah, right. Yes.
Let's make him look like a draft bust for 4 years and then watch him go in the NFL.
Or even better, let's do nothing but zone read and bubble screens. But yes.
Rose Bowl, read option. We coming.
Yes. Low zone read option, bubble screen, to your heart's content. But yes. I was one of the people that saw him before that offense came in. I saw him his first couple of years there, and I knew he could do other things. So I was sold on him anyway, even despite their attempts to, as you said, darken or dim the shine surrounding him. But enough about that. Let's talk about this particular week. I'm also excited about some games, and I'll roll through on them. I'm going to roll through sort of the chalk, the games that everybody's talking about, and then I'm going to throw out a game that maybe isn't being talked about, well, maybe at all, but certainly not terribly much. So Clemson Wake Forest will be a game that will decide. Well, I mean, not a lot for Clemson unless they lose. It'll then knock them probably from playoff contention. But for Wake Forest, if they either win or look really good, which admittedly is not quite the same as winning, but we're grading on a curve here. It establishes one that Wake Forest, despite being by enrollment, I think almost 45% smaller than the next smallest school in the conference by undergraduate enrollment, and a school where I don't think they've ever signed a 5-star in the history of the program. They might have a 5-star transfer in maybe, but I think they've never signed one. And they've only got a handful of 4-stars in the entire history of the program. But if they can still continue to show that they're that irritant or whatever term you want to use, it means that they can still continue to recruit the kind of guys that they recruit, which, are the kind of guys that Duke recruits and the kind of guys that sometimes go to Stanford. But it's a particular kind of player, right? I mean, if your biggest concern is making it to the NFL, you probably don't have Wake Forest on your short list. But if you're a person who is good enough to play in the NFL, but you want to get a high quality education, blah, 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 and you want to stay in that part of the country, it gives them a chance. And Clemson has, I think, the most talented front seven, maybe in all of college football, including, yes, I said it, including Georgia. It's certainly in the competition. It's certainly in the same breath, in my mind. That front seven is right there with Georgia.
It's stifling. There's no doubt about it.
Yep. I truly do believe that. And if somehow the Demon Deacons can deal with that, they have a chance. Texas A&M and Arkansas is almost like a loser leave town match, right, from the old wrestling days. Texas A&M needs a win for reasons that are obvious, I think, to anyone, because the loser of this game is most likely, trying to fight now to get into a good bowl game at that point. The college football playoffs are probably a pipe dream if you lose this game. I mean, you could get back into it by knocking off, Alabama or something, but anything short of that for either of the two teams in this game that don't emerge as the winner, that's their only path, is to somehow, knock off a team that's, a top 5 team. Ohio State is really good. I mean, that's not really news. I don't think people are analysis, but they're not perfect.
No.
Their defensive front scares me a little. And that's the one thing that Wisconsin, I mean, once again, you could wake up a person from 10 years ago, from 20 years ago, from 30 years ago, from 4 years ago and say, hey, what's Wisconsin good at? Oh, offensive line, right? Whatever decade you wake up a person from, in the last 4 of them, they're going to give you the same answer if you ask them what's Wisconsin really good at.
Exactly.
So that is the one thing I worry about. Still, Ohio State should win this game, but if Wisconsin can turn back the clock, as they say, and shorten this game by running the football and being good on defense and maybe get a couple of turnovers, they have a chance to hang around and make this game scary. And then before we go to our sort of off the beaten path games, USC is ranked in the top 10, probably a little too hastily. I know that people are buying into the hype, and I've sort of done it myself. They could easily get exposed in this game. Even if Oregon State loses, they could end up exposing USC. USC's secondary, it's not bad. There's things I see, though, that concern me. I think that it's a good collection of players. I don't know if they know each other well yet. There's a lot of moving parts, a lot of literally moving parts on that team. A lot of guys were playing someplace else last year on that team. So this is, one of those things where people will keep asking, is USC back? Well, obviously, if they struggle against the sturdy Beavers from Corvallis, the answer will be no, even if they win. But they have a chance, if they should destroy Oregon State and, make, once again, just sort of stamp on them and never let up and win by, 6 touchdowns or something crazy. Now people will really start asking, okay, now is USC back?
Yeah. I think that USC hasn't been given enough respect. To me, they're a top 4 team in college football at the moment, in my opinion. Obviously, Caleb Williams is an elite level quarterback in college football. And he can do a lot of things a lot of quarterbacks can't, especially in that side of the country. Then you got Addison on one side, who's kind of a gem of the receiver in college football. But on the other side of Williams, Mario Williams, right? Yeah, he stud, absolute stud. And obviously moving parts, but that old line has been there for a minute. So that's why I think that stability of that is the reason why USC deserves to be ranked a little higher. I just think they're firing all cylinders. Their games haven't really been that close. The big test to me already happened, which is at Stanford, and they smoked them. Yes, if they perform poorly against Oregon State, alarm bells start going off. But at the same time, if you look at the current landscape of college football, there's a monster brewing in the Pacific Northwest. Washington is just beat Michigan State, like we mentioned. Washington State's undefeated and unjustifiably unranked after they beat Wisconsin on the road. Oregon obviously smoked BYU this weekend, and its only bad game was against Georgia. And then Oregon State is undefeated, especially after a really testy game against Fresno State a couple weeks ago, or last week. So to me, at this point, even if USC plays poorly, as long as they win, I think that's the main thing, especially when you look at some of these last week's performances across college football. Like, as long as you keep stacking W's, that's all that matters. Second thing, real quick, is that Wisconsin's actually good at 2 things throughout history: running the ball and losing in the Rose Bowl. All right, I just want to oh, I'm sorry. I know. I'll see you on Twitter. All right. What are you going to do? Transfer me a running back so I can beat you guys again? It's whatever. But, you come into the season, Graham Mertz was almost like, he was like the Bo Callahan. He's literally Bo Callahan the way they hyped him up, right, from draft day. And then you got Allen and Malusi in the backfield. You're supposed to be this offensive juggernaut. It's going to run, pass, run all over you. And then what happens? You put up 10 against Washington State at home. That's why I'm not too concerned about Ohio State's front 7, because Ohio State's front 7 is miles above Washington State's front 7. And even if they play poorly, their offense is a lot better than Washington State's. Love Cam Ward, but their offense obviously ain't to that level yet that what Ohio State has. So I think Ohio State's going to come in, slap around a little bit, put in the backups by the third quarter, and then come out with a comfortable win. Paul Chryst is in a world of hurt right now. I'm not calling for his firing. I want to make that very clear. Because everyone's like, every time I mention a coach, I'll get him off the field. No, he's a great coach. He's a phenomenal coach. But you got to start asking questions of your program if you're going to be losing these types of games. Well, against Washington State, and then if you get blown out against Ohio State.
So we're going to go back to the West Coast for a moment, and we are joined by the one, the only, the other George Lopez, once again avoiding copyright infringement. So we've been talking about, as everyone's talking about, is USC back, right? And obviously Pac-12 football has gotten a little bit, I won't say disrespected recently, but deservedly, the Pac-12 has been seen as not quite keeping track as a conference with the SEC, the Big Ten, and Big 12. But it looks like maybe not only is USC back, but is the Pac-12 back? So that's my question for you, the other George Lopez.
Well, Bill, thanks for having me. It's kind of hard to say that USC is completely back. I went to the first game against Rice, and the outcome is what I expected. Rice wasn't going to really show much against USC. Rice is more of a baseball school, if you will, for athletics. So I figured Stanford would tell us a little bit more. I don't know if Coach Shaw has a type of team he normally has, because offensively, USC looked really good. And all three games, they've looked really good. Defensively, the only thing I can say now is Coach Grinch has got that defense really pursuing to the ball. You're seeing at least 8 guys at the ball at the whistle. I won't say USC is completely back. Everyone's already got this. It's back to the Pete Carroll days. It's way too soon. Way too soon to say that. We'll find out a whole lot more this Saturday because Oregon State always plays them tough up in Corvallis. And when they go to Utah in a couple weeks, then you're going to find out where the whole USC team is. So, no, I won't say that they're completely back. They're projecting that way, but they're not there yet.
So who's the other team in the Pac-12? Like there's going to be another team that emerges this year. We normally just hand that title to Utah recently, and sometimes Oregon in the past, and even Stanford. If you go a little further back with Stanford, as you said, you can tell that they have not. It takes them a while sometimes to groom their teams because they don't always get guys who are just ready to play right away. They may be a couple of years away. Oregon looks like it might be a little down this year. I mean, once again, it's early. But who is the other team in the Pac-12 to you, George?
Well, I still think Utah is probably the team to beat right now in the South. Well, in the Pac-12 South. They should have beat Florida. It was a bad mistake at the end when he threw the interception in the end zone. They played them tough over there. I would have said UCLA, as much as I can't stand saying that, up until they played South Alabama. There was no way they should have won on a last-second field goal. And what annoyed me even more is they celebrated like they just won the national championship.
Yep.
That was a game I thought they should have just rolled right over South Alabama. So I don't know what's going on with UCLA now. I actually felt going into the season they'd win a minimum of 9 games this year. I still think that, but they're not as well. At least they didn't play against South Alabama as well as I thought.
Yep.
So I would still say it's probably Utah right now as look as a team to beat. Washington, I think, might be a sleeper.
Yep. Yeah, I don't even know if sleeper is even the right term. I mean, they've always recruited well there. And sometimes we talked about it. So some teams collect talent and, it never really amounts to anything. And when I thought that Haener was going to transfer back there, I was about to predict that Washington was going to win the North. And then Haener didn't transfer back. So I was like, I backed off. I got scared. I should have gone ahead and still predicted it maybe. But but I do like what they're building there. I like the coaching staff. I think they're maybe a year ahead of schedule because I always thought they were going to be really good next year. Why is Washington ahead of schedule, in your opinion? Why do they look so good so soon?
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't hear that. What was that question again, Bill?
I was saying Washington, to me, is about a year ahead of schedule. Why do you think Washington looks so good so soon?
Well, I think it's the coaching staff. They get the players that fit their system. They may not be the 5-star blue chips. They're going to get guys that fit exactly what they want to do and that are very coachable. And he's got a good coaching staff around him there. That's why they're gelling earlier than expected. I mean, I wasn't expecting much out of them, and I'm kind of watching it from a distance, and I'm impressed with them. I'm very impressed. It won't surprise me if they knock Oregon off this year.
Like I said, I was predicting that before when I heard Haener was going to transfer back, and then I got scared. I should have stuck to my guns. Brock, you have any questions for the other George Lopez?
Absolutely. Thank you so much for coming on the show. I'm going to kick it off with USC, Oregon State. One of my favorite memories when I was first starting to watch college football, it was number 1 USC went up to Corvallis, and Jaquiz Rogers and his brother ran all over the Trojans in an upset victory. Could we see something like that this weekend, or do you still have USC coming out with the win?
Okay, I'm sorry. It was a little broken up. I think it's on my end of my connection because I'm actually at my kid's school waiting for them. I'm sorry, can you repeat that question again?
No problem, man. Do you see Oregon State knocking off USC this weekend?
Okay, do I see Oregon State winning this game or?
Right.
Yeah.
Is there any chance for an upset? Right. He's asking if there's a chance there might be an upset there.
Hold on. Let me log back out and try to get back in. See, maybe I get a better connection. Give me 1 moment.
Sounds good.
While George is dealing with that, I'll ask a quick question back to you, Brock, because
yeah, just give me 1 quick second, Bill. Let me try to get back in.
Do that, and then I'll kick it back to Brock while you do that. So you obviously get a chance to see a little bit of what goes on in the high school area. Guys are making decisions, including guys in Las Vegas area. Las Vegas didn't used to be a big recruiting place until about less than 20 years ago, really about 12 years ago. You went from Las Vegas being a place where, there was high school football played there, but nobody really talked about it until fairly recently. And now all the Pac-12 schools, I remember the first time a big name recruit signed someplace outside of like the Mountain West or the Pac-12 was when DeMarco Murray ended up being signed by Oklahoma. And I was like, Las Vegas? Like, that's the first time I remember thinking Las Vegas, So from what you know, are you hearing anything about what Pac-12 teams are doing the best job of bringing in talent from the area where you're from?
Yeah, they're really just emphasizing the biggest, baddest schools as the pipelines to getting guys out to the Pac-12, which is the crown jewel of Las Vegas and Bishop Gorman. That's really never going to change. So they're really kind of basing it off that. And the way Bishop Gorman plays, they're not playing just in Las Vegas. They're playing other teams around, which kind of gives them an opportunity when teams from Las Vegas play them, like Liberty or a team like of that nature. How do they match up? So that's the way it's kind of going about it. It's all just springing out from Bishop Gorman at the moment. Obviously, DeMarco Murray is the crown gem. But if you look around the league, around college football, the other guys that come out of Las Vegas are like Will Hernandez, Ramondre Stevenson, guys like that. And they didn't really attend those big high schools. But fortunately for them, the spotlight that has been shown on Bishop Gorman allows for some of those players from fringe schools to kind of get a little bit more light. So realistically, in Las Vegas recruiting, it goes where Bishop Gorman goes.
Got it. And we've got George back, so I'll let you go back to, you were sort of asking if there was the possibility of an upset. And I guess as sort of a follow-up, what would it mean to Oregon State and USC if somehow this game was either very, very close or possibly even Oregon State won? So, George, if you can answer about if there's a possibility of an upset and what would that mean? Can you hear us, George? Okay, that's a no. Okay, so we will soldier on. So we'll use this opportunity to listen to this very important announcement.
In 2006, we founded Yeti Coolers with a simple mission: build a cooler we use every day if it existed. One that was built for the serious outdoor enthusiasts rather than for mass discount retailers. One that could take the abuse we knew we'd put it through, out in the field and on the water. One that simply wouldn't break. We decided early on that production innovation would come from necessity and first-hand experience, not from market research and data analysis. Today, Yeti products perform when it matters most. Whether that be an excursion into the remote Alaskan wilderness, chasing redfish on the Gold Coast, or just getting together with friends in the backyard, we make gear that helps you stay out longer, travel farther, and live harder. # built for the wild.
Okay, we're going to try this one more time. Can you hear us now, George?
Yeah, I'm just getting, I don't know if it's just by the school, if it's just a bad connection, because it keeps breaking up on my end.
Well, this is our last minute or two with you. So, Brock, you asked if there was a possibility of an upset, and then sort of I will
say that there's definitely a possibility of an upset this weekend. Oregon State always plays USC tough in Corvallis. I know it's not as loud as Oregon's, as Duck Stadium, but they do get very loud there. There is that possibility of an upset.
Okay. And then your follow-up question, Brock, before we lose George again.
Washington State was my favorite to win the Pac-12 North. What do you think about that?
He was asking about Washington
State. Okay, I'm sorry.
I'm just
Washington
gonna say
State?
it, Bill, and then can you repeat? Yeah, they're my favorite. What do you think for the Pac-12 North?
Wait, I know you didn't ask me about Washington State winning the North, did you?
Oh yes, I did. Yes, I did. Yes, I did. They're
Okay, good.
undefeated.
I actually right now I have Washington winning the North. I think they're going to knock Oregon off this year. Oregon, I know it's a new coach, the guy coming over from Georgia. I don't see it this year. I don't think he's got the recruits that he needs for Oregon style of football. I think Washington's actually going to win the North this year. And I think that game in Utah is going to with SC is going to determine who wins the South.
Okay. Final question for George.
I'm sorry, what was that again, Bill?
Oh, I was just asking Brock if he had a final question for you because I know you have to run in a moment. Oh, or now.
Oh.
We flew too close to the sun.
The bell just had to ring, and he has to go pick up his kids now. Fatherhood.
Wait, hold on. We might be getting. Oh, here we go.
Not ring yet. Here we go.
Okay, final question.
Can UCLA win and be a big time program with Chip Kelly?
You know, I apologize. Everything's breaking up. I really apologize about this, Bill. It's just my connection is not stable. I keep getting everything broken up. It's all muddled on my end. I know it's not you guys. It's my connection. Doing this on my phone while I'm waiting for my kids to get out of school. So my connection is not really strong. So I keep losing you guys.
Yeah. He was just asking if you thought that UCLA could go back to being a big time program under the direction of Chip Kelly.
Yeah, see, I couldn't even make it out. Again, I apologize, Rob and Bill. I really apologize. I was looking forward to being on this. Just wasn't expecting this kind of connection on my phone.
Got it. Not a problem.
George,
I promise we will have you back in the future. I'm sure you had some beautiful, wonderful insights to share with us next time. Okay. So we'll use this opportunity to once again hit you with a very
Enjoy 40% off site-wide. Vitable takes the guesswork out of feeling good. Get your own personalized daily vitamin pack safely delivered to your doorstep every month. Take their online quiz to find out which vitamins and minerals can support your personal needs based on your own diet and lifestyle. Hashtag only what you need, nothing that you don't. All vitamins are manufactured in Australia at the highest quality standard. Ingredients come in the best form for their absorption by your body. Enjoy 40% off site-wide using code NBS40 at checkout.
Okay, so Brock, let's go to our sort of off the radar, off the beaten path thing. So this is your opportunity. One, if you want to talk about something other than just, outcome of a game, including, people that you would like to see hired, fired, whatever, that kind of stuff. And then talk about, like I said, a game that maybe we haven't discussed that is intriguing to you.
Gotcha. So, obviously, the big thing in the world of hiring and firing is the Nebraska job, right? Everyone is hyping this up as this crown jewel of a job. That's going to be this great catalyst for a great career as a great coach, whatever. I'm sorry. It's not. I'm sorry. We got to stop acting like this is the early 2000s, late 90s. Nebraska's not a good job. It's not. If you look at every Power 5 conference, right, and if every job became available, would there be a top 5 job in any of the Power 5 conferences? Maybe the ACC, maybe. But think about it like this. Pac-12, would you rather coach at Nebraska or would you rather coach USC, UCLA, Oregon, Utah, right? I mean, some of the Arizona schools. Like, they're a fringe top 5 at best in the Pac-12. SEC, we're not going to get to it because it's not even going to be close. Big 10, they're obviously the lower end of the Big 10 already. Maybe fringe of the Big 12, depends on which school you're talking about. And again, fringe of the ACC. It is not a top job, but they have extremely high expectations. Why would you want to put yourself in that situation? But you know who is the perfect man for that job? Jamie Chadwell from Coastal Carolina. He has not been getting any love from anybody for no reason. What he has done with the Chanticleers down there is absolutely incredible. He's built a almost unstoppable offense for the league that he plays in. Grayson McCall is an NFL prospect because of his guidance. And to me, with what Nebraska has at this moment, Jamie Chadwell should be the guy that gets the Nebraska job. Not Matt Campbell, me because Matt Campbell, to me, going from Iowa State to Nebraska is a lateral move at best. I don't think Matt Campbell should be the guy for that job. I think Jamie Chadwell is, and I think the disrespect of not mentioning Chadwell's name in these conversations for being a top candidate is just, to me, it doesn't make any sense. So that's my take for today.
Yeah, I'll throw out another name. Charles Huff. We just saw his Marshall Thunderbird knock off Notre Dame. And I'll just address the elephant in the room. As was mentioned, when their interim football coach, Mickey
Joseph, right?
Yes. Who I remember from when he was at Marrero High School in Louisiana. Another feel-old moment for me. I remember him as a high school prospect. But that is the first head coach of any sport who is African-American in the history of Nebraska. In any sport. So while I wouldn't say they should do it for the optics, because one, Charles Huff is a hell of a football coach. They would be, frankly, lucky to have him, and it opens up Florida to them, right? He, through his years at Penn State and other places where he's been a coach, he knows how to recruit what I call the speed corridors of America. Nebraska has had the speed corridors of America closed to it recently, right? They've done a decent enough job of working the third tier and second tier of prospects in Texas and California. But they have not gotten guys from the East Coast in a while. They used to do back, once again, I'll go back to when they were, the Tom Osborne Unstoppable Killing Machine. They would have a bunch of guys from places like New Jersey, right? Irving Fryer, Mike Rozier, guys from the East Coast, not just the Midwest, not just the South, but guys from the Midwest, guys from the East. They were truly a national recruiter. Mm-hmm. Before really national recruitment became a big thing, because when they were in Nebraska, you kind of had to be a national recruiter, because even though there was talent in the Omaha area, you couldn't build the program they had just from Omaha, and even the areas, even Kansas City. Like, even if you go out to, they were forced to be a national recruiter before most people embraced it. And then that stopped, right? I mean, now they're back to being a regional recruiter, and they're sometimes losing the recruiting battle to Minnesota, right? I mean, they're getting beaten out sometimes for, it would have been unthinkable that somebody would choose Minnesota over Nebraska. Even 10 years ago, it would have been unthinkable. So they have a problem. And I remember when they joined the Big Ten, I said, this is a mistake. This is not Monday morning, whatever. I said this on the front end. I said that they were going to get squeezed by Iowa. They already were competing with Iowa State, and Iowa State wasn't good, but now Iowa State is good. Iowa is always good. And with the rise of, it's going to sound strange, but the rise of North Dakota State University, which obviously is an FCS program, but it's a juggernaut of an FCS program that is putting guys in the league every year.
So yeah, I hate that moniker FCS, because it makes you feel like a less of a good program. They played Division I teams fairly often, and they whooped them behind.
They beat Minnesota. They beat a lot of teams. There's a lot of teams they would beat. UMass doesn't want to see North Dakota State University. There's a bunch of FBS programs that would get.
Is there like a quarterback university around in the FBS? Because what I do know is North Dakota State had 2 top 3 quarterbacks go within the past 5-6 years.
And Easton Stick is still collecting game checks as a backup.
Hey, so 53-man roster, that's all that matters.
Right. So they're doing better than most of the SEC schools you can name, right? I mean, Kentucky hasn't had a starting quarterback from their school in the NFL, I believe, since Tim Couch.
The only one was Lawrence, but he was a backup, of course.
Yeah, he was a backup, and except in the Arena League where he was an absolute legend. And rest in peace to the round mound of first down, the Pillsbury throw boy. Yes, he was so much fun to watch. But the point I'm making is that they put themselves in a really bad situation recruiting wise by joining the Big Ten. So they took a difficult place to recruit and made it harder. Right? That was the first thing. It's a bold strategy, Cotton. Let's see if it hasn't worked out for them, right?
Delusional.
Right. So you add to that by turning into a place where they're going through coaches, quicker than ever. I mean, Kansas is now a place where they've solidified their coaching, right? Lance Leipold is going to be there for, I mean, if they're smart, for a long time. I would be throwing piles and piles of cash at him. And of course, Nebraska should make that call as well. I mean, they should at least kick the tires on him. I don't know if he wants to leave. And once again, is it now a lateral move to go from Kansas to Nebraska?
No, it's not a lateral move. It'd be a downgrade. Why would you want to go from
wow.
Whoa. Wait, hold on. Am I wrong? Which team?
No, I didn't say you were wrong. It's just
West Virginia. Does Nebraska beat West Virginia? Before the season, I would have said yes. Now I don't know. And West Virginia is not even good. They had a great game last week, but Neil Brown is still on the hot seat.
Okay.
I think it has to be said. Nebraska is horrible. All right.
Well, I mean, it's funny because, and I was going to talk about this in the next segment. Kansas is currently undefeated and about to take on an equally undefeated Duke, and we'll see obviously how that one plays out when we get to that. But I am interested to see if Nebraska doesn't just decide to go for the biggest name, right? If there was a time when they would automatically say, well, who's the biggest name guy out there? And I think maybe they're looking, hopefully now, more towards a program builder than just the biggest name guy out there. I hope they don't just throw a pile of cash at Dan, what's his name? Former Florida coach.
Dan Mullen.
Right. I hope they don't just throw a pile of cash at Dan Mullen or something like that, because, I mean, once again, he would raise the profile of the program, at least for a little while, but I don't think he's a program builder. But once again, I don't know if they realize they need building, but they do, whether they know it or not.
Yeah, that's the issue with Nebraska in general, is they think they're literally a piece away from being back to where they used to be, right? And they were a national program at one point. You talk about the East Coast. I'm from Hawaii. Tonio Fonuti and Dom Raiola, right? Two guys that they took from the islands and became absolute monsters on that offensive line. So they really had coverage everywhere. And then after Devaney left, they promoted Osborne, who had a phenomenal career as head coach. And then for that, they promoted Solich. Obviously, the Solich incident happened, and they promoted Pelini. And then they started looking out like, oh, we don't need these guys anymore. We don't need Bo Pelini, right? We're going to go get Mike Riley from Oregon State, whose best season was a 9-win year at Oregon State, and we're going to pick out the guy that's worst year was a 9-win season. And they haven't been the same since. Nebraska, for some reason, thinks they're like the Texas A&M of the Midwest, essentially. Oh, we're one piece away. We're one coach away. We're this. We're that. You don't really have anything going for you besides a big stadium at the moment and a really good training facility, which at this point, everyone's getting a good training facility. Maryland's getting a good one. They got like $140 million. LSU got a 380. Kentucky got a big one like several years ago. That's why they're so good now. What does Nebraska have that other teams don't at this point? Before, it would be really strong play. You contend for a national title. You play in the best facilities. You're in a place where your university loved. Everywhere has that. But you know what Nebraska doesn't have? NIL money. That's why they're not going to go anywhere. And they think that, oh, people want to come here because they want to wear the N on their head or the Nebraska on their chest. No one cares about that anymore, right? Who are those kids that grew up watching Nebraska going, I want to play for them one day. I want to put on that jersey. No one, because they suck for so long. Like, I just don't understand this delusion that they're so close to being back. They're not a top 25 team. They're probably the average team in college football. There's the line and like Nebraska sets it, or they're right above it at best. You know, you can get Huff, you can get Chadwell, you can get whoever you want, but the issue is not who you bring in. It's the fact that they want you to win by year 2, and that's just not possible. That's why Scott Frost faltered, and there's a multiple reasons he faltered, but one of them were the expectations were too high. That's why Mike Riley didn't work out. That's why Bo Pelini's tenure didn't go as he wanted. I remember when Nebraska first joined the Big Ten, people thought they were going to be in the conference championship game year 1. Everyone thought, oh, Nebraska's running away with it. Nebraska's going to be it. Nebraska's going to contend with Ohio State or Michigan or whoever, right? And guess what? They didn't. They've only made one championship game or whatever division they're. They've only made one Big Ten championship game, and they got smoked, I believe, by Wisconsin in that game. They're not good. Like, just because you have 100,000 person stadium that doesn't mean that you have 100,000. What's the right term? Doesn't mean you have football that should be played in front of 100,000 people, right? That's kind of my main point. Kansas 3-0. Kansas State rebounded after Bill Snyder left the second time, and they're now juggernaut, even though they just had a really bad loss. What can you truly say about Nebraska that makes it that big of a program for what you can win immediately? You're not better than Northwestern. We made that clear in Ireland. You're not better than Michigan. You're not better than Michigan State. You're not better than Minnesota. You're not better than Ohio State. And you're not better than Iowa. Who are you better than in the Big Ten? Are you better than Maryland? I don't think so. Maryland's actually winning, right? So I know I'm just going on this rant about Nebraska, but it just infuriates me to see people believe in Nebraska as much as they do, when in reality they haven't shown anything to say, yeah, they're the team that can really make the jump this year. Illinois is better than them, right? And they proved it last year in Brett Bielema's first year when they beat them, I believe, in Lincoln, right? Purdue is probably better than them. They're literally the bottom three of the Big Ten, and three might be, being nice. They might literally be the worst team in the Big Ten. I'm not saying they are. There's a couple of the worst teams, but what can you really say about Nebraska that makes you say they're going to be a contending program next season? They're going to be a contending program in 2 years. They're going to be a contending program in 3 years. I don't know. Also, how do you not have a black head coach in any sport? Football is understandable because of the history of that they had long coaches and they promoted within. That's whatever, right? But you have a basketball program, you have a baseball program, you have volleyball programs, you have programs up the hoo-ha. How do you not have a single black head? Sorry, just going on a rant again. Like it just shows the incompetence that is Nebraska, and that if you have any faith in Trev Alberts, watch his college football segment from like 2003, 2004 when they said that they should fire Frank Solich. And remember what they did after that? They brought in who? Bill Callahan. I'm sure his name is really beloved in Lincoln right now. So that's all I gotta say. That's all I gotta say.
Well, yes. Well, that was delightful as always. And so the gauntlet has been thrown down. Trev Alberts, will you pick it up? Will you pick it up?
No, he won't. We already know how this is gonna go. He's gonna try to offer 5 top guys. They're all gonna say no, and he's gonna pick the worst dude out the bunch. All right, Gus Malzahn about to have a job in Lincoln in about 6 months.
Yeah. Hey, kids, it's Bob Stoops. Okay, so back to.
Hey, kids, it's Urban Meyer.
I hope we're kidding.
Yeah, it's coming. The guy that said Terry McLaurin sucks is coming to Lincoln.
So on a happier note, in the basketball bowl, as I mentioned earlier, Duke is playing Kansas. Both of them are at the moment undefeated. And one of my favorite sort of under-the-radar players, a couple of my favorite under-the-radar players, in fact, will be featured in that game. And I'm going to start with Jalen Daniels. So I thought they were going to be in trouble when, what was the name of that Jason something. He reminded me almost like a best value version of Robert Griffin III. He was a hurdler. They had a quarterback. Like he really was like a not poor man's, but like lower middle class man's version of Robert Griffin III at Kansas. Jason Mix.
That's mean. That's rude.
He was a good player, but like not quite Robert Griffin III.
No, I just wasn't.
Okay, but he transferred out, and I was like, oh wow. I was thinking like, oh Kansas, you were on your way to being. Remember when the Kansas almost beat Texas, and this kid went wild on them?
Yeah,
for like 403 total yards. Remember that, Jason?
I know exactly what you're talking about. I just can't remember the name.
Yeah, Jason Mix something, but. The point is that when he transferred out, I was like, oh, man, Kansas. Oh, you were right there. And what I didn't know was that they were going to bring in somebody better, or at least somebody a better passer, obviously not quite the level of athlete. And so Brent Dearman, who is the offensive coordinator for Lance Leopold, has this tremendous pipeline of like undervalued offensive talent, right? And so this 3-star kid sort of got lost in the sauce down in Southern California. He went to Lawndale. And at the same time, right, just miles away, you had DJ Youngilele, you had CJ Stroud, and of course, Bryce. So I can see why people didn't pay that much attention to him. But this kid was great. He's undersized also. So no one's going to really notice you when Bryce Young, DJ Youngalele, and CJ Stroud are right up the road a piece. But he ends up being a terrific high school prospect, sort of falls through the cracks a little bit. Schools like Middle Tennessee State, FAU, et cetera, and he ends up eventually signing with Middle Tennessee State. But they get him to transfer there to Kansas. And you notice, okay, he's probably 5'11-ish. But he can move around a little bit. He's not really a runner, but he definitely has more than enough arm, right? More than enough arm. And I just think he has a real chance to be really, really good, to be really, really special. When he left Middle Tennessee and landed there, I was like, okay, this could happen. This could work. And they also have some stuff, right? I mean, in addition to this one really interesting player in Jalen Daniels, they convert third downs at a super high rate. I think they're one of the tops in the country in converting on third downs. They have 13 rushing touchdowns, which I think is number 4 in the country. They're one of the top teams in yards per rush. I think they're second only to Alabama or something as a team. So they have a lot of sort of positive numbers. And obviously, Duke isn't the sternest of tests, but it'll certainly tell you some things. And, the overtime win versus West Virginia, I thought was really, really interesting. And then the biggest sort of signal that this might be a big year for them was that 48-30 upset over Houston, which, I mean, once again, it's not a Power 5 team, but they're definitely a Power 6 team. Like Houston would beat a lot of, like Vanderbilt doesn't want to see Houston coming, right? I mean, there's a lot of teams in the big conferences that would not do well against them.
Yeah, absolutely. Dado Holgerson, like, let's not discredit the man, what that man has done in his career at West Virginia and obviously now Houston. Last year, Houston was a monster, and people don't necessarily talk about it. I think they lost their opener, Texas Tech. Don't quote me on that. I think they lost their opener, and after that, they just went on an absolute tear. So Houston's a team to watch out for when they make their jump to the Power 5 conferences. But going back to Kansas, you lose arguably your best receiver, one of the best receivers in program history, in Kwame Lassiter, and you get better. Like, that's, to me, the biggest sign that brighter days are for the Jayhawks are ahead. Like, when you're able to replace a talent of his quality and then exponentially improve, the sky's the limit for the program. This is the best position they've been in since probably the Orange Bowl. I mean, my goodness, they're a team to watch, especially with Texas and Oklahoma lead the Big 12. Like, we're all kind of wondering who's that team's going to step up. And we're always talking about Baylor and Iowa State and Oklahoma State, right?
Yep.
Could Kansas be in that mix? At this point, it might be jumping the gun, but for what Kansas used to be less than 12 months ago, I think they're a team to really watch out for in the future.
Yeah, I remember watching them a few years ago, and they had a sprinkling of good players on a team that wasn't good. I mean, I loved Puka Williams Jr., right? He was exciting to watch. You mentioned Kwame Lassiter. That's a guy that I really liked and thought had a chance. But as a team, right? Kyron Johnson. I was a huge fan of Kyron Johnson when he was coming out. So you saw, sprinkling, whatever term you want to use, of guys who had Andrew Parchment, right? Was another good receiver on that team, as I remember from a couple of years back. But as a whole, right? And what's his name? Who plays for the Bengals now? Adeniji, Hakeem Adeniji was their best offensive lineman, really their only offensive lineman. I mean, the only one that was of interest, I should say. So I saw, the way that team was constructed. That they weren't going to win a lot of games, but they had, like I said, a sprinkling of talented players. Oh, I like this guy. I like this guy. Now, when I look at that team, it's like, oh, it's not just a sprinkling. It's not just one guy here, one guy there. There's something to this team. There's, multiple guys on the team that, not just good players, but they have the team is a good coherent team. They have the ability to win more than one way, which was definitely not true. I mean, they used to be, they had to, I mean, they've either had to somehow get not lucky, but quarterback gets hot or whatever it is, and they are able to have a big game, or Puka Williams goes crazy on somebody or whatever it is. But now they can win multiple ways. They have multiple good players. They have some depth, I guess. That's the word I'm looking for. They have some depth. There's some depth on this team. Khalil Herbert, sorry, is the other player I used to like who was back there. Of course, he transferred to Virginia Tech. But that's the other player I used to watch when I was watching, when you're sort of forcing yourself to watch Kansas, it's like, okay, you have to find somebody to focus on. Well, I like this guy. This guy's good. And now it's not just one or two guys. So, yes, I do think that brighter days are ahead. Lance Leipold does have strong ties to the state of Nebraska. He has, coached previously as an assistant at both Nebraska and Nebraska Omaha back in the 90s in the case of one of them, and in the early or mid 2000s, I guess, in the case of the other one. He's gotten teams to 3-0 before. He did it back at Wisconsin Whitewater, where he built, an absolute, juggernaut of a Division III program, and then in Buffalo, where they, knocked off some good teams and threw us, some scare even to teams like Ohio State while he was there. But this is it, man. If you can win at Kansas, I mean, that's so. Mark Mangino called Lance Leipold, and he said an interesting phrase to him. He said, "If you win at Kansas, they'll crawl on nails for you," and that's sticking with me. Like there's a statement. Will they crawl on nails for Lance Leipold? First of all, they need to throw a lot of money at him. That's the first thing you do. Throw an enormous amount of cash his way. Step one, giant bag of cash.
Yes.
Before we go to our last segment, do you have anything else you want to say?
No, I already just Mangino's right. People still talk about that Orange Bowl, and I don't think people remember how good Virginia Tech used to be back in the day in that Orange Bowl. I think Tyrod Taylor was a starting quarterback.
Yep.
Obviously, Beamer had a program rolling, and through Aqib Talib and Chris Harris, being the quarterback duo, and obviously having that great season, they won the Orange Bowl, and Mangino will forever be beloved in a place that is known for basketball. So he's absolutely right. I do believe that Leipold is that next dude. I think even if he gets the Nebraska job, I think he stays in Kansas, because the thing that he's building right now is gonna outweigh Nebraska if it keeps going in the trajectory for which it is.
Okay. We'll take a quick break and we'll be right
Pickup
back.
is a fan engagement platform that aims to build communities and turn the biggest headlines in sports into free-to-play props while rewarding fans for their hot sports takes. You've likely seen their props on Nuts and Bolts Sports and some of your other favorite online publishers and leagues like USA Today, NASCAR, Flow Sports, and others. Simply make your pick on the Pickup prop and verify your pick by entering your phone number, which you will use to track your picks. Accumulate points and exchange for prizes in their marketplace. Their merch ranges from Fanatics gift cards, cross nets just in time for summer, dugout mugs, and more. Make your picks ahead of the draft now.
So in our final segment, we're going to dig a little deeper in a few things. Obviously, this is where if you have a upset you want to predict, this is a great time for it. If there's a topic that you want to, like I said, explore a little more in depth, or if you would like to sort of pick out on a particular prospect, a player that has really caught your attention and you're going to be watching the rest of the season. So I'll start with you, Brock. Give us a nugget or a something that you've unearthed and you want to keep going with as we roll into this next part of the college football season.
So as much as I love Tennessee, I don't think that they've shown me the consistency that I like to see, and I do have them on upset alert against Florida. That's my upset alert for this week, because if Tennessee can't get the ball rolling, which sometimes can happen with that style of offense, and if Anthony Richardson and ETN can get the ball rolling on their offensive end, it could be a shootout, and shootouts always go 50-50. And Hendon Hooker has been sometimes can put balls in dangerous situations.
Michaela Chester for NCAA Digital. I'm joined by Steve.
Okay.
So I have that for my upset alert. A player that I've really kind of grown attached to as this college football season has kind of come on. I always talk about the running backs, right? I talk about Bijan. I talk about Mohamed Ibrahim. I talk about Henderson. Braylon Allen, but there's a young man who we talked extensively about at Illinois that put on another excellent performance last night. Mr. Brown up there, I think he has joined the upper echelon of running backs in college football, and I think to me he's not getting the flowers he deserves because he is, in my opinion, as of right now, a top 3 running back in college football. In terms of coaches, I want to shout out Dino Babers, University of Hawaii alumnus. Yes. It wasn't too long ago they had one of the best seasons in school history, and followed by him being on the hottest of hot seats. Now Tommy DeVito left, obviously, go to Illinois. He has really stabilized that program again, and to me, this could be a catalyst for a longer tenure up in New York or possibly another move as well. Last thing I want to say before we head out is obviously in this coaching carousel we go on, people get fired, people get hired. I always talk about the guys that get fired, but I think that we talk about Mr. Huff, right? Charles Huff out in Marshall. You talk about Nebraska, to me, there's a perfect job for him that's much more south, and that is at Jordan-Hare Stadium. To me, Auburn is the perfect place for him. Here's why. You can talk about the Florida roots. He has southern connections already. He already has the connections up north at Penn State. He obviously has made a really big impact in the West Virginia area already. When you talk about the East Coast, Virginia Beach, Maryland, those areas, he's a notable name. He's very relatable to players. He puts players in good positions to win in tough situations, and that's exactly the type of guy you need at a program like Auburn. It's really clear that the Harsin tenure there is most likely going to end after this season, and whether that is justified or not, which it's justified, that doesn't matter. When they're looking for another head coach who can re-elevate them to the heights they experienced during the Cam Newton years and obviously during Bo Jackson years, to me, he's the type of guy that you need to get in order to make Auburn that powerhouse in the SEC. The fact that Auburn has never made a college football playoff up to this point is extremely disappointing. And to me, this is the guy that can do it. He's not going to be that guy that beats Nick Saban every year or beats Georgia every year or does anything like that. But he's the guy that can get it done when he needs to. And that's the person that Auburn needs to get the program going again. Dan Mullen, we talk about him. There's a program down in Arizona State that should probably be giving him a little call. Honestly, Arizona State got rid of Herbert Edwards in a really awful way. You know, meeting with him on the field, we all saw the videos. Pretty disgusting by the program. But that's a topic for another time. Dan Mullen, to me, is the guy that can really kick up and restart a program like Arizona State and return them to the heights that they experienced not too long ago. That's a very impressive season under Herm. That's a pretty good season under Todd Graham. And obviously, we talk about the years with Jake Plummer down there. So Dan Mullen is a guy that I think we should really look out for Arizona State. The last program I want to talk about real quick that will most likely experience a coaching change is Colorado. It's pretty clear that Karl Dorrell has kind of run his course there. There's really not anything more to say when it comes to that. If you're looking at who's a guy that can really reestablish a culture in Colorado or really bring it back to its heights, I'm going to take a guy that's not in college football right now. I'm going with Bronco Mendenhall, the former BYU and Virginia coach. I think he's going to get back into coaching soon. I think Colorado is going to be a good place. They're going to give him a lot of time because of his history of being successful in other places. And when he gets into a place like Colorado where it has its recruiting roots all over, I think that could be a great fit as well. So those are just some of my upset predictions, coaching predictions, and my takes for the college football season.
I'm going to throw one other name into that Colorado hat, and that's Robert Anae. I am upset, disappointed, whatever term you want to use, perplexed that he has not been given an opportunity to be a head coach. He has been known as one of the top offensive minds in college football for, 20 plus years. You mentioned Bronco Mendenhall. Obviously, he and Bronco Mendenhall have known each other for 26 or 7 years, some crazy number of years. He's been one of the most respected coaches, period. And obviously, when you talk about Asian Pacific Islander coaches, one of the most respected. And, Kalani Sitake and Coach Ken Niumatalolo and are part of a very, very short list that shouldn't be that short. It took Norm Chow forever to get his first chance. He was 66 or 7 or something. He finally got his first chance to be head coach.
Don't mention the name Norm Chow in Hawaii, though.
Sorry. But my point is,
that's still a sour topic.
I got it. My point is, he should have gotten his opportunity before that. He should not have been so far into what should have probably been his retirement by the time he got his chance to be head coach. But yes, so I want to talk a little bit about HBCUs. And there's a couple of really interesting HBCU matchups that have grabbed my attention. Now, Prairie View A&M used to be a laughingstock. They are one no longer and have not been one recently. And they'll be taking on Alabama State. And it's the game of the week in the SWAC. Rookie head coach Eddie Robinson Jr., has this 2-1 team coming in. The Hornets are a team that's young but talented, I think, heading, in the right direction. And then obviously Prairie View was the SWAC West champions last year. They beat Texas Southern in the Labor Day Classic, but they've also lost their last 2 games. So we'll get to see. It's a measuring stick or whatever term you want to use game, litmus test game for, to some extent, both programs, but particularly Alabama State, because we don't know if they're for real. But Miles Crawley, their quarterback, is a guy to keep your eye on. They have a running back named Ja'Cory Merritt, who I think might be one of the fastest players in the SWAC. Urshad Davis is another guy that is part of that committee system they have at running back. Prairie View A&M has a running back that I really like named Ahmad Antoine, and they have a linebacker named Keyshawn Johnson, not that Keyshawn Johnson, obviously, who is another guy to keep an eye on. Alabama A&M will be playing Florida A&M, which I'm trying to get used to the fact that Florida A&M is in the SWAC because they were in the MEAC forever. And then Hampton will play Delaware. Hampton used to be in the MEAC, but now they're in the CAA. They were in the Big South for a couple of years. They've left the Big South. They're in the CAA. Hard to keep track with all the realignment. South Carolina State, this is the other game I've circled. South Carolina State will play NC A&T. And I think that's going to be a really interesting game. South Carolina State is one of those teams that year in and year out, they don't get all the attention maybe they should. But first of all, Buddy Pugh is, to me, a future Hall of Famer as a coach. Terrific defensive mind. And they're going to be good on defense again this year because they're good on defense every year. So those are some games that really intrigue me. I think HBCU football doesn't get nearly enough attention as a whole. And I'm going to just shout out one particular player. Andrew Farmer II is a tremendous defensive end. And I've watched him now 3 weeks in a row, and he's made at least one wow play every week. Now, Lane is not a powerhouse. They play in the SAAC. But this might be their year, at least in part because of him. He is virtually unblockable. I think he might be number one. He's number one in the country in Division II in tackles for loss. Everybody knows he's coming. He was really good last year, too. It's not like he's sneaking up on anybody. Every team's game planned for him, and they can't stop it, right? That's when you know you're good. When the other team is already spent hours game planning for you. You're the guy they talked about at the beginning and ending of every offensive meeting. We can't let him beat us. Number 44, we have our eyes on him. And then number 44 is wrecking the game anyway. That's when you know a guy's good. So that's where I wanted to end on. Brock, I believe we will have Jeffrey Fan on. So Jeffrey Fan, of course, is on Talking ACC Sports. So not surprisingly, he'll be talking ACC Sports, particularly ACC football. I look forward to having him. We will have George on again in the future, hopefully without any sort of issues next time.
We'll wait for the school year to go on break, and we will bring him back. And then also, Robert and I know you love him a lot. I had a different place in mind for him. West Virginia Mountaineers.
Really? Now that seems a little less. I mean, it could still work, but I was thinking Colorado because he's, that part of the country. He's already a known name, and Colorado already has established some ties to bringing guys in from places like American Samoa, Tonga, Hawaii. But yes, why not? Sure.
I mean, Challen Fa'amalu, former Farrington High School, Hawaii running back, is at Maryland. So to me, that sometimes doesn't matter as much. But when West Virginia was at its peak with Rich Rod and Pat White, by the way, younger generation, look up Pat White. He is literally the prototype to whatever modern offenses are today. He was brought into the league far before his time. I think Cam Cameron was his head coach, which really hurt him. Had he been given the right situation, he would have lit it up. But look up Pat White in West Virginia. But beside the point, and Steve Slayton as well. Beside the point, West Virginia was best when they had an innovative offense. I think that's why Anai is the guy.
He was born maybe a dozen years too early. I love hearing you say younger generation because you do have all your adult teeth now, I guess. So I guess we can allow you to say that. But once again, this has been great. And once again, like I said, we will definitely bring back George. But next week we should have Jeffrey Fan on, and he is incredible font of knowledge about ACC football. Watch this very important message about swag.
The Team Nuts and Bolts Sports Store is officially open. Log on to www.teamnbsmerch.com and get your t-shirts, hoodies, polos, all sizes available. Once again, log on to Team NBS Merch.